trying to keep track of anyone who is joining in the waiting room. But we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a kind of different time and day and format, but with the Thanksgiving holiday, when we switched our meetings to the fourth Thursday this past year, we just kind of run into this falling on Thanksgiving. So do our best. All right. So just a couple of items on our agenda for today. We'll kind of just jump right into things. I don't think we've had any changes in membership. No, I don't think we've had any changes in membership since our last meeting. So that is kind of our ongoing list of members, participants. And kind of the first piece of business is to approve our meeting minutes. So if anybody has any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask. Otherwise, if I can get a motion to approve, so you can raise your hand and try and keep track of these notes. Okay, so I got Jen Wasik and Alicia Early. Let me just jot some notes down. And unfortunately, we can't do polling, or at least I haven't figured out how to do polling in Teams. So if I can have folks just type into the chat that a simple yes to approve the minutes, and then I'll be able to track these. Chat, excellent. Great. Thank you very much. These will get posted to our website along with the meeting presentation recordings. So you can find those on the new website on the section for the lower disciplines group. So we're going to jump into non-point source studies for the NARP. So we covered a little bit of this the last go around, and we had a presentation from Dr. Baker at the September meeting talking about the Minnesota's street sweeping kind of planning tool and calculator, and the work that both the University of Minnesota put into it, and then kind of follow up there with Tetra Tech. Has also worked with Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to develop essentially a crediting tool. So we'll be utilizing that as part of this. And I guess maybe taking a step back with the NARP, the major components really are looking at reducing phosphorus to improve dissolved oxygen conditions within the stream and address the kind of nuisance algae issues. And so the vast majority of phosphorus is coming from our wastewater treatment plants, but we are also still required to look at the non-point sources of phosphorus coming through stormwater. And so based on studies from other places, particularly in Wisconsin and Minnesota, where there's been a number of research projects that have looked into sources of nutrients coming in through stormwater systems and kind of really drilling into what those sources are and the times of year and kind of the amounts, and the based on those studies, the largest sources of phosphorus annually is coming through leaf litter. So I think like somewhere in the order of like 80% of phosphorus load coming through stormwater comes in the fall months and is associated with leaf litter. So kind of utilizing that information to help us narrow into how we can look at non-point sources of nutrients for our NARP. This seemed like the place to really look at. if we were going to make any kind of impact on the non-point source side. So the DRCW and Lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition, because they're all part of the same watershed, they are working on their NARP together, and they are doing this. They have actually almost completed this study for their watershed area. And so the map up here kind of shows kind of the whole, like our Lower Des Plaines watershed component over here, and then the Lower DuPage, and then the DRCW watersheds up here. So we have the same street sweeping and leaf litter survey. We did them as two different links, one for the DRCW Lower DuPage, and then one for Lower Des Plaines, and had sent those out over the summer and into the fall. There's still some that I would like to track down and actually get some information for communities, particularly in Cook County. So we'll continue to work on collecting that data, so at least we can get some representative data for kind of that much more dense land use in the Cook County portions of the watershed. But basically that survey data is meant to collect information so that we can both take credit or assign credit to the leaf litter collection practices that we are currently doing in the watershed, because removing those leaves from the system, where we are removing phosphorus that could be getting into the stream system, and then looking at the street sweeping practices that follow leaf litter collection, and then look at making some recommendations for optimizing phosphorus removal. So there was a lot of good background from Dr. Baker's presentation the last meeting, and if you weren't able to make that meeting, we do have the recording up on the website if you want to watch his presentation. So kind of components of the analysis that we want to do, part of it is collecting that information from through the questionnaire, doing that literature review, which a lot of that actually comes from the component that the DRCW and Lower DuPage are already working on, utilizing the phosphorus crediting tool from Minnesota to help assign credit to, like I said, to the practices that we currently are doing, both in street sweeping and the leaf litter collection. And so DRCW had entered into a contract. They went through a whole RFP process for this, and they were under they actually had this report, an analysis as part of their NPDES permit requirements. So they had a timeline on it. They'll have their report done by the end of the end of this year, the end of December. But they contracted with Baxter and Woodman to work on this project. And so there's kind of a lot of knowledge already in place. And so I'm on the part of the review committee for that project with Lower DuPage, or representing Lower DuPage on that. And so kind of watching the process that they've been going through. So I reached out to Dan Bounds at Baxter and Woodman to put together a proposal to essentially duplicate a similar study for the Lower Des Plaines. And since we do have a number of communities in both watersheds, some of that we asked those communities really just to enter or fill out just one of the surveys. So we'll be able to take that survey data and utilize it for the Lower Des Plaines side. So here's kind of a quick list, a summary of the tasks that are in the proposal from Baxter and Woodman. Basically working with, taking all the information that was collected through those surveys. We'll be working with one of an intern that the DRCW has on staff. She entered in all of the data from their surveys and put it into some analysis tables that are, that then feed into the calculator, and then utilizing Baxter Woodman staff to really kind of go through all of that analysis, help us to develop what those approximate capture rates are for the current practices. There's I have actually a map on the next slide to show you some of the GIS outputs that will come from this, and then to come up with sort of what our findings are through the study and be able to make recommendations utilizing the report and then making recommendations as part of a component of our NARP. And so, really looking at identifying cost neutral or cost effective ways that we can improve the current practices. Again, realizing that the vast majority of phosphorus is coming from point sources. The reductions that we can make through non-point source are small in comparison, but street sweeping is not used just for the goal of street sweeping in general for communities is not for phosphorus removal. So they're out there doing street sweeping anyway. So if we can potentially make some recommendations that could improve those current practices to do a better job with phosphorus removal, we can gain some additional benefits. So here's a picture of one of the outputs that is coming out of, that'll be reports for the DRCW project. The Morton Arboretum and I forget which university put together actually a really cool tree canopy layer for the whole region. And so you can see they actually map out the trees, and you can even get general species of trees through that data layer. And the work that Baxter and Woodman did as part of this project is looking at land use, so using CMAP land use and associating land use with the roads that are adjacent to that land use to be able to map out different land uses and then the tree canopy cover in those roadways. Many communities break down how they do their street sweeping based on land use, so they may do more street sweeping in like residential areas versus commercial industrial areas. So being able to map this out and really show where those areas are, and then look at where kind of the biggest benefit would be of street sweeping as related to phosphorus removal. So this data set will then be available to all of our members if you want to be able to kind of dig deeper into it and look at how this may help formulate your practices, as well as some of the data and information that's available through that street sweeping planning tool that Dr. Baker showed last meeting, where you can, even looking at based on like how much money you have to spend on street sweeping, and plugging in the information for your community and how that can help you then guide where you would gain the more benefit and still staying within your budget. So we'll have more data available to communities to help them make those kinds of decisions. And again, the recommendations that would be in the NARP would be geared towards what can we do to improve the practices that we have kind of within our kind of constraints budget wise, particularly as making big changes in our practices to really drive to really reduce phosphorus in this area. The cost benefit in that would be kind of challenging as we look at really the source on the point source side. So again, making recommendations that fit within what communities currently are doing, and just helping them be more efficient within that. So does anybody have any questions on this at this point? And feel free to just unmute and ask questions. Okay. All right. So what I would like to do, so for the Baxter and Woodman contract, it's a lump sum contract of $19,570. And if there's no questions on this, I would like to get a motion to enter into a contract with Baxter Woodman for the analysis project, not to exceed that amount of $19,570. So I have Alicia, and I'm sorry, if people can unraise your hand so that I can see who the new folks are to make the motion. All right. Yeah, I'm having a little, I can't quite see everybody on my screen at once. So if I can get for the motion, if you could just unmute yourself and say your name and make the motion, please. Oh, all right. Let me see if I can change that. Sorry about that. There we go. I think I turned it on. Hopefully people can go ahead and unmute now. Nope. Okay. Sorry. This has been, all right, I'll just reopen the chat, and if folks can, if I can just get the motion that way. Okay, so I have Allison and Zach. Okay, thank you. And then if I can get everybody just to type in the chat a yes or no vote on the motion to enter the contract with Baxter Woodman. Okay, thank you, everybody. Now I see. Okay, I think now I was able to turn on mics for or the option for people to use their microphone. So the second one would be a motion to utilize DRCW intern to assist with data entry and analysis for the project, not to exceed $1,500. So if we can maybe try the voice motion again and see if that works.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, I got that.
Second, Killinger.
All right, perfect. Thank you very much. And then again, if people can just type in yes vote. All right, thank you very much. And again, if anybody has questions along this, please let me know. I'll also be, as we get into this project, be reaching out to anybody who would be interested in kind of participating on like a project committee for this as we go through to the point where we're actually looking at recommendations and things like that. So if you can reach out to me if you're interested, you can put it in the chat or you can just send me an email afterwards. And as we get moving forward with the project, I include you on those conversations as well. and then we'll be, bringing components back to future presentations as we're moving through the project. Okay, the next kind of big thing of note, the Illinois Pollution Control Board issued their order for the time-limited water quality standard for chloride. So we've long been calling this a chloride variance. It's really not sort of a straight up type of a variance. So I'm going to kind of try to shift to using the time-limited water quality standard. But in general, this is what we've been talking about for a number of years now, since before 2018, as far as the chloride variance goes. So I've put together here a list, and I can provide the order to anybody who would like to see it. It's, I think, about 100 pages long, but I think the order itself starts on about 65. But I can definitely share it with folks who haven't seen it yet. But pulled out what the Watershed group sort of requirements are. So there will be 2 Watershed groups associated with this. The one for the Chicago area waterways. So that is a new group that just formed. I think many of you met Hannah Miller at one of our previous meetings, who's on our staff now at the Conservation Foundation, and she will be coordinating that group. They're officially the Chicago area waterways chloride work group. And so they've been getting up and running over the summer, and are an actual and official group now. And then the lower DuPage River Watershed or Lower DuPage Watershed group will be the watershed group that will be coordinating efforts for the lower. Did I say Lower DuPage? I'm really sorry. I've had both meetings today, and it's been a lot. So for the Lower Des Plaines portion of the chloride variance area, the Lower Des Plaines Watershed group will be taking on that coordination. So the things that as a group that we will be responsible for and participation in is that all of the dischargers granted coverage under the order will be required to participate in one of the groups. And so if a discharger is within both groups, they can choose one of the groups to participate in. They don't need to participate in both. The watershed groups have to meet at least twice per year. So, that's not an issue with our current schedule as it is. In the third year of each term, so there'll be 3 terms, or 3 5-year terms. Within the third year of each of those terms, we'll have to compile a status report, basically taking all of the annual reports from all of the dischargers and summarizing the findings and putting together a status report, and then making that available to the public, as well as providing it to the Illinois EPA. We're required to prepare outreach and educational materials on the impacts of chlorides and share with all dischargers, as well as other users within the watershed. This can include like the outreach materials that we currently do, as well as training programs. The other wording on this part is really kind of odd, but it says funding or other support to implement BMPs in communities where new equipment is not affordable. I am not exactly sure how to take that, because the text is in the part where it's really talking about education and outreach. So it'll be interesting to see exactly how that language comes out. Let's see. So in year 7, to coordinate with IEPA to identify any different non-point source categories and prioritize implementing education outreach efforts to those categories. We got to continue our sampling program. So the contract that we currently have with USGS will continue with collect that continuous conductivity data, collecting, basically being responsible to collect sufficient data to perform reevaluation. So I think, over time we may look at, like, currently we're only collecting that conductivity data on the main stem, the Des Plaines River down near Sanahan. So, to look at whether or not we start collecting any additional, whether conductivity data or chloride data at other points or on tributaries or things like that. There is a reevaluation process that happens every term. So by the 4.5-year point in the term, there's a reevaluation that needs to be resubmitted. There's a whole list of information in the order about what goes into that. So there are lots of details there. And, we were discussing this with the cause group the other day in the potential that we will likely want legal assistance in submitting that reevaluation. So that maybe, it'll be something that we will probably want to look at budgeting for and likely sharing or maybe trying to split those costs with the cause watershed group as this likely can be done all together. And then having a place to post all reports, the annual reports from dischargers, because those need to be made to the public and applied to the watershed group, and then any status reports or other information like that. So we have a page on the website right now, kind of earmarked for the chloride variance. And there's not a lot of information up there yet, but we will be definitely adding to that as we get more information. The kind of next steps with the order is that it's been sent to US EPA to approve. I think once US EPA approves it, it appears that that's when the clock actually starts ticking on that 5-year time frame. But once US EPA approves it, it'll go to Illinois EPA, and then Illinois EPA will actually put all of this into a permit for everybody. So yeah, to see kind of how all of this translates to permit language. Just kind of some things that we're already doing, and in part working with the cause chloride group. Hannah and I are working on a summary of all the requirements to provide the dischargers. I know everybody's been talking about this for a long time. And in some cases, communities or dischargers, their attorneys were very involved in these discussions. And so now that this is becoming real, to get this in the hands of the public works folks, those in charge of winter de-icing programs. So we're working on that summary that we should have out soon, as well as the document itself, to really kind of look at how do we start planning for the things that are required in the order. One of the first things is the pollutant minimization plan. Throughout everything we've seen up to this point, it is due 6 months after the order or after US EPA approves it. And they refer to it in several spots of saying, that the pollutant minimization plan must be done in accordance with the timelines, outlined in table 4, but then it's not actually listed in table 4. My guess is that's just an error that was made. And then there will that it does belong in that table. And so that's still what we're planning to be ready for, is that pollutant minimization plans need to be completed in those first 6 months. The plans are really meant to kind of be the guidelines, the plan for how we're going to accomplish or how dischargers are going to accomplish all of these requirements, over the 15-year period. We've been discussing within the chloride committee, within our chloride committee, as well as with the Chicago Area Waterways group, about developing a framework for what those minimization plans are. And we have a draft of that we're trying to put some more detail into to be able to put out for review, and kind of using that same, and then also setting up a meeting with Illinois EPA to make sure that kind of what we come up with for a framework is what they're looking for. So we're actually going to try and get a meeting scheduled with Scott Quaid, hopefully in January, to be able to start kind of talking through some of that. We've been reviewing snow and ice plans. This was something we've been discussing through the chloride committee of making sure that the communities have up-to-date snow and ice plans. Ideally, having the kind of detailed information in your snow and ice plans that then would be referenced in when we put together the PMP, so that the documents aren't necessarily duplicative. The snow and ice plan should reflect what you are currently doing, and potentially your plans for the next year or two. Whereas the pollutant minimization plan is really what's your plans over the next 15 years, kind of looking at it in 5-year chunks. We just sent out a salt use survey, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in another slide. Next slide. We've been continuing the development of education and outreach materials. We'll be sharing the winter stuff with you in a few slides. Hosting our winter deicing workshops, and then working with the grant that the Conservation Foundation received to develop the parking lots and sidewalks training and certification program through the Salt Smart Collaborative. And so that would be a way to help not only addressing the salt use in parking lots and sidewalks and private contractors, but also to be able to provide a certification program and some language as through the variance communities will be required to implement BMPs and do annual training, and then anybody that they hire also has to implement those same BMPs and participate in training. So this program here would be able to kind of provide an outlet for that. So those are the things that we are currently working on, and will continue kind of over the next several years as we tackle this together. The chloride committee will continue to meet. We're not going to hold a meeting in December, just in that it's getting into the heart of winter season. Hopefully, we will be sharing information and requesting information through that group, but we're not going to hold a meeting in December. So we have the salt use survey out there. Through the development of the variance, they had utilized the survey that DRCW had created a number of years ago and had communities participate in that. So we've taken that survey as the base, and then we've updated information in it so that we're gathering information that's required as part of the chloride variance. There's a lot more requirements around documentation and tracking, and so we're asking questions around that to kind of see where people are at, as well as trying to create kind of a baseline, like where were you, what kind of practices were you doing prior to applying to the variance. So looking at that winter of 17-18, and then what things have you implemented since then, so that we can kind of take credit for improvements that have been made as we've been waiting for this order to be completed. So we really would like all communities to participate within the watershed area, but we are requiring participation for anybody who is a part of the variance. So I've sent that out through our normal email list, but I'll be also following up directly with the communities that are part of the variance. So again, data will be utilized for developing components and providing support for the chloride variance, developing that PMP, and then also to support the outreach and training materials. So I have the link there. It was in the meeting notice that went out, both a reminder yesterday as well as the notice that came out last week. So several places that it is available. Quick summary for our winter de-icing workshops that we held earlier this fall. We across the 5 workshops that were held, we had over 930 attendees. We coordinated over the years, we've always coordinated with the lower DuPage River Watershed Coalition. Over the last 2 years, we've kind of really expanded that coordination effort with the DRCW and the Conservation Foundation, and then this year adding in coordination with Lake County and the Upper Des Plaines Watershed Group, North Branch Watershed Group, and then work with DuPage County, King County, and McHenry County. Since these were virtual, it just made sense to get the word out to all the broader area and work together and coordinate these efforts. And so we actually did make a little bit of money. So the goal was to cover the costs of having Sport and Consulting do the 5 workshops. We brought in some funds through some sponsorships as well as the registration for the workshop. And once we have the final numbers, it'll be split, I think, 6 ways between the groups. So we'll have a little bit of money, I think a couple $100 coming back to the Watershed group for that. So go towards continuing these outreach efforts. And then we're working on planning some additional, to stick with the virtual trainings as we're definitely able to get more people there. I think it's convenient for communities in that it doesn't take quite as much time if you're not sending somebody somewhere, that they can, whether they participate from all together in a group with it, at their municipality, or having people do it separately. That has worked, I think, fairly well. We've gotten some good feedback on that. One of the things that we may look to next year is maybe offering a session in the afternoon. So if organizations have second shift workers, that might be easier access for them. And then with the expansion of, the variance being put in place and really expanding that outreach to a broader area, we may work with the other groups to potentially offer additional workshops, or maybe in different parts of the year at some point. So lots of things still to figure out for 22, but I think we had a good turnout and some good feedback. We are continuing the winter technical briefs as well. The first one got rescheduled from November 9th to December 7th. That morning that we were supposed to hold that was when Comcast kind of went down across the region. So we'll have Denver with K-Tech Specialty Coatings to do that presentation in early December. We just held one on this past Tuesday morning on brine. We'll have the recording up for that soon. And then next on the 30th, I'll be doing a presentation really focused on communications with your residents. So how to use the materials that we've developed through the Watershed groups, and communicating with your residents, communicating with your elected officials, with your staff, and how, the importance of that. So these are meant to be kind of really targeted topics and short presentations, about a half hour with a little bit of time for discussion. And all those recordings will be made available for SaltSmart. I'm going to turn things over to Leah to talk about outreach for the winter materials.
Okay. Hi, everyone. So yes, we have new SaltSmart materials, as well as materials that we've made in the past years. So now we have a nice little cache of all of these outreach materials. And to find them, so go to the next slide, you can go to our website, ldpwatersheds.org. And then you can go to /outreach. It'll take you directly to our outreach page, or you can scroll to the very bottom of any page on the website and find the link in the footer. And then specifically our chloride related materials are also on saltsmart.org. But if you go to this outreach page, you'll see all these different topics of our materials, and you'll find the SaltSmart one there. And each season we come out with a few new blog topics. So this year we have one on anti-icing, one about how pets are affected by salt and how you can be salt smart to protect your pets. And then kind of a more general one of the impacts of chlorides, especially how they affect the environment in a few ways. And then going along with our blog posts, we always create social media graphics, which is really nice because you can post them side by side. So on Facebook, you can post this anti-icing graphic and then also post a link to the anti-icing blog post. They pair well that way. Or you can just use them on their own in a newsletter or on a website or something like that. And we have 3 really cool posters this year, or graphics. The first is what you could put inside the doorway of a park district, a school, an office, some type of building where you kind of have a broom, a shovel, or things to help clean up snow. So the idea is before you grab the salt, try to get rid of as much snow and ice as you can, and then sprinkle on the salt that you need. The second one is we're kind of have this little campaign going called Lose the Crunch, Love the Lines, and we're going to try to get this hashtag going of Love the Lines and sharing pictures of different communities using anti-icing stripes, and just spread awareness that we don't need to see a pavement just completely blanketed in rock salt, and instead that we can work smarter and use things like anti-icing when the conditions are right. And then the last is a fun comic, just trying to switch up the format of our outreach materials. And so this is kind of similar to that first poster but more targeted at residents, that, again, before you use salt, you should use tools like a scraper, a snow plow, a shovel, to get rid of as much snow as you can first before turning to salt. And we also have this available as individual panels. So you could post that to Facebook or Instagram and people could kind of click through and it can be interactive. And then I think the next slide, we have some videos. So just a few, we have a short PSA about salt use, how more isn't always better. And then about a 1-hour webinar that kind of goes through a lot of the different components of chlorides and how you can be salt smart. And then a specific kind of tutorial about how to calibrate a walk behind salt spreader. And then we've also shared, Romeoville made a really great video about how we can help plow drivers get to our streets faster when we don't park on the roads when there's snow or put our trash bins out in the road. And so if you've made any videos, your community's made any videos on chlorides or any of our other outreach topics, like we always do want to share those. So please let us know if you make really cool videos like this. The next slide.
Oops, sorry.
No problem. There we go. Okay. And then we also have some physical materials. So we have the salt scatter cups, which is nice because you can that gets the idea across that you don't need as much salt as you think, because one of these cups can cover 10 sidewalk squares or kind of an average driveway. And then we also have bookmarks with different steps to be salt smart. So we have these. If you want to pass them out to your residents, let us know and we can give you cups and bookmarks. And then we saw this graphic from Iowa DOT, and they kind of did these profiles about some of their plow drivers, and we like the idea of kind of getting to know who's behind the plow, who is helping keep our roads safe this winter, and to have that human face. So we were wondering if any of your communities would be interested in doing something similar like this. Like, you would provide us the photo and the information, and then we would make a template that and put this information in there, and we could kind of share it across social media or in any other form. So we want your input on this. If this is something you're interested in, please let us know. Jennifer, do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, it's just a
Okay.
matter of, we don't, because this is something that would be fairly, community specific. We would definitely want to be working with communities who are interested in it. And if there's nobody who would actually use it, then we'll put our efforts into other materials. But if you like the idea, like I said, we can come up with a graphic template, and then we just need information from you. And then for this, because it is so specific, I mean, it would still have like the Salt Smart Collaborative logo on it, but we can also incorporate whatever communities name on the side of the truck or things like that. So we can definitely work with communities to customize this if this is something that you're interested in. And then the last thing too, and I think actually, Leah, you sent some stuff out to communities about looking for, we're looking for pictures and opportunities to videotape, parts of your operations, or, how you store salt or liquids, or how your operations function, so that we have more materials for next year. Most of our winter materials we have done by the middle of October, before there's snow on the ground. So in order for us to have more material to work with for next year, we definitely need to be getting out during this winter. So we're going to continue to reach out individually to folks, but if you're interested in having us come out and videotape or photograph stuff, then we can obviously make it available back to you as well. Or if you have ideas for, if you take a look at the video that Romeoville did, and you have ideas of things that you would be interested in doing, but maybe don't have the capacity to do that, reach out to us, because we'd love to partner with communities on doing stuff like that. So please reach out to us and reply to Leah's email that she sent out. I think it was last week or earlier this week. Looking for that kind of input. All right. Does anybody have any questions about any of the outreach? Like Leah said, we post stuff to the Lower Des Plaines Facebook page. So if it's easier for you to just share stuff for your community on our Facebook page, or just at least follow our Facebook page and like it, that helps kind of get the information out a little bit further and grow our community here. But generally, you're trying to make things as easy as possible for you to share this information. So this is a good way to do it. And again, customizing any of the materials, please reach out to Leah. And we're happy to help. All right. So that's all I have on the agenda. If there's anything else that anybody has questions about, or things they'd like to bring up, go ahead and unmute and chime in. So we have our meeting scheduled there for 2022. So again, in November of next year, we'll run into the same issue of the meeting falling on Thanksgiving. So either we can do it like we did this year with having an afternoon meeting, or just push it out a week and have it the following Thursday, and still stick with our 10 a.m. So we'll probably chat with that at the board level and just see if that interferes with other meetings that we know of. So we'll firm that final meeting date up hopefully by early next year. All right, if nobody else has any questions or comments, we've pretty much hit on everything. If you have anything you think of, go ahead and reach out. Otherwise, everybody have a really nice holiday season, and we'll be back in January for our annual meeting on, that was January 27th. Thank you, everybody. And we'll see you next year.